Buongiorno, amico. Io sono L'Occhio. We are back with the second episode in our Lucha series, starring the legendary Wolf Rovinsky as Neutron. Just a quick recap, Wolf Rovinsky is a Latvian-born Mexican actor. As a child, his family emigrated to Argentina. While Rovinsky toured South America, the United States, and of course, Mexico, he would have a career in the ring as a rudo, and would wrestle until the 1960s. And in 1960, he would star in his own trilogy as El Enmascarado de Negro, Neutron. One of his films, Los Automatas de la Muerte, was released in 1960, and was directed by Federico Curiel. That name will come up more, especially when we review El Enmascarado de Plata. Federico actually has a long list of films under his belt, including, but not limited to, Santo en la Misión Suicida, Los Campeones Justicieros. The sequel, Vuelven los Campeones Justicieros, Las Momias de Guanajuato, Super San el Invisible, La Venganza de las Mujeres Vampiro, Santo en el Oro Negro, Enigma de la Muerte, Las Vampiras, La Sombra del Murciélago, Los Canallas, Las Arañas Infernales, and El Ático Negro, with many more classic Lucha Libre films. This film was released on August 10th, 1962, and currently holds a 3.6 on IMDb, making it the lowest rated film in the Neutron Film Trilogy, and series as a whole. So, does the sequel always suck? Let's find out. Same intro from our last film, Neutron el Enmascarado de Negro, with two roosters doing the 69, and the title Estudio America. Wolf Rovinsky stands on a hill overlooking the city. Title, Automatas de la Muerte. Neutron, El Enmascarado de Negro. A white car is driving on the road, while another car is in hot pursuit. They both stop in front of a Museo Anaquali, and the two men go inside. We are then transported to Jaime's living room, and the gang is all there. The three amigos, Nora, Professor Thomas, the butler. A news report talks about how Caronte was defeated, and shows a picture of Neutron as a hero. The news reporter says, Neutron had help from three young men. Honestly, it was two young men. Jaime kind of just picked everyone up after the event was over. Carlos, Mario, and Jaime are shown on TV. Then we get some exposition from what happened in the previous movie. I'm not recapping that, but you could watch my review of Neutron el Enmascarado de Negro, only on Retro Lucha TV. In some lab, Professor Thomas is pushing dials and making notes. At this point, I realize Neutron is a lot like Batman, in the sense that he just burgles into people's homes with no invitation. He says, Buenos dias, profesor, and enters stage left. Professor Thomas is not alarmed by a masked man entering his lab and asking, What's up? Instead, Professor Thomas is sad that the formula for the neutron bomb is gone. But Neutron brings up a great point. Caronte is gone, so we should make the neutron bomb. Professor Thomas agrees, and asks Neutron if he can take off his mask since there is no longer any danger. Neutron responds by saying no, because danger may still lurk. And says, I will be your friend, and help you when you are in need. And like any true friend, he just leaves. Back at Dr. Caronte's evil lab, we get something brewing. The little person, Nick, opens a trap door. He looks drunk. And somehow, Caronte is in the rafters. Nick is confused and tells Dr. Caronte, The newspaper said you were dead. Caronte replies with, Surprise! I left, but my automatons are dead. The little person reminds Dr. Caronte that he has more automatons. Caronte agrees, and they hold hands and go back to the sliding door. In Caronte's basement, somehow all the computers are still working. I thought this place exploded in the last film. Does the neutron bomb only destroy living matter? It doesn't matter. Caronte goes into a freezer and checks on his automaton. 1 is good, 2 failed, 3 is also good, and 4 is almost ready. You know, it's kind of cool. This film shows the failures of the villain, almost making him seem human. Almost as if they were leading to some failure or weakness in the design of the automatons. Is this actual insight into how to defeat them? Or is it a topic that is never brought up again? Let's find out. He looks up at another cooler, and it's the professors. There's Wilson, Duval, and Professor Mendez. Apparently, the little person actually collected the bodies after each of the attacks. We get one close-up shot of the automatons before going back to Restaurant La Roca. It's Nora. She is singing. I couldn't find the song. I tried, but if you know the name of the song, leave the title in the comments below. After her set, she says hello to Jaime, who is at the club to support her. Jaime says, "I bet you weren't expecting me." Nora replies with, "Why wouldn't I? We are friends." Then Jaime gets sad, because he has been wanting to tell Nora he has liked her since the last movie, but still doesn't have the courage to say anything. Jaime just repeats, "Friends, Nora?" Anywho, a second man sings. I'm pretty sure the song is De Todo Corazón by Vicente Fernandez, but I can't confirm. If you can, leave a comment below. Jaime says, "Don't you understand how much I like you?" Nora asks, "Can't we be friends?" But Jaime is needy. Jaime does not respect Nora's independence, and Jaime will only respect Nora's unavailability if she is with another man. But this is a terrible way to look at relationships. He should respect Nora's decision, not because she fancies someone else or is committed to someone else. Instead, he should respect Nora's autonomy, since she is her own person. Sure, Jaime may not find love with Nora, but no is a valid response, and Nora does not owe him an explanation. Also, Jaime should not chase love that will not be reciprocated. That will only lead to heartache. Anywho, Nora says, "Oh look, it's Mario." Mario wants to make Nora a TV star. Jaime asks if he's offering a role or asking questions. Nora says, "Sí," or "yes" in English, and tells Mario, "You are such a good friend." Mario, in a confused tone, asks, "Friend? Ruh-roh?" Jaime says, "That makes two of us." Back at Dr. Caronte's lair, he yells at the automatons. Like most parents, he yells, "I have created you to serve me. Listen well, you shall always obey me." He tells Nick, "We started phase 1. Now it's time for phase 2. He says, "I will unite the brains of all scientists into one that will obey me. But I need blood, lots of blood." At some park, a drunk is walking until he is attacked by 3 automatons. He is unalived, and they place pennies on his eyes. Nick drains the bodies of blood. Back at Dr. Caronte's evil lair, he is mixing chemicals, and Nick brings him blood. This movie reuses a lot of shots. Dr. Caronte says, "I need more, even more blood. Maybe a live body. The brains need a live victim." He also orders Nick in the nicest way by saying, "You must take advantage of the night." They hold hands and skip away. Back at the park, cops find the bodies with pennies on their eyes, and the police realize Dr. Caronte is back. But the chief says, "Es imposible." Thankfully, Neutron comes out of the bushes, and he is certain that this is Dr. Caronte. The chief says they found another body 2 hours ago. They notice the blood is gone from the bodies, and both the chief and Neutron announce they will support each other in the investigations. Sirens are heard, and the chief and Chema turn around. The chief begins to say, "I think it's about time you leave." But when he looks back, Neutron is gone. At Televicentro Studio, Nora is grateful and nervous about the show. Mario also wants to profess his love, but Nora says, "I don't want to hurt your feelings." Mario says, "Oh, okay." Grateful, Nora says, "Gracias," or Dankeschön in German. See, Mario respects Nora. That's it. People are not prizes to be won. They have their own hopes and dreams. Anywho, Carlos and Jaime walk in. Carlos tells Mario that Caronte is not dead, and that 1 man and 2 cops were unalived and found with pennies on their eyes. Mario's upset. He says we saw his remains. He then pivots. The coins are proof who is back. And then we get a dun 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 shot of Mario. On some random street corner, a couple is arguing. Apparently, the man has wandering eyes, and the woman is being toxic. She is jealous. Not a good look. He says, "I love you," and like any emotional mature couple, they begin making out in a public park. Until they are attacked by 3 automatons. Good. PDA is gross. Back at the lab, Dr. Caronte and Nick feed the brain's blood through a funnel, and the doctor says, "The brains have cellular nerves. With this process, they will work for me." Now, El Ojo is not a doctor. El Ojo was an adjunct English professor, but El Ojo does not think putting 3 brains in a jar and pouring blood on them will make them come alive. But I could be wrong. At the police chief's office, they're getting calls about vampires. But the police chief is mad because a journalist says there is a beast on the loose. To be fair, that is a valid reason to be upset. The journalists are just lying. The police chief tells Chema, get the 2 officers in charge of protecting Thomas on the phone. Then he moves away from the phone so that Chema can make the call. What a lazy boss. Back at Jaime's place, one of the police answers the phone and says nothing to worry about. Jaime arrived home and the professor's in his lab. Jaime begins smoking. Remember kids, smoking is bad. Cut to a brain with an antenna. Dr. Caronte has connected the brain to a machine to speak. And somehow all 3 scientists are now in one brain. Dr. Caronte tells Nick he needs to be careful, only collecting pure blood or else. I think Dr. Caronte may have studied phrenology. Anywho, they hold hands and skip away again, which makes him seem wholesome. At some newsstand, a boy is closing up shop until an automaton appears. He tries to run away, but it's a trap! He is attacked on 3 fronts, like Germany at the end of World War II. But unlike Germany in the end of World War II, Neutron comes to rescue the boy, while Nick looks on. A 4th automaton appears, and Nick starts blasting. At this moment, I realize 2 things. Nick has a giant unibrow. Yes, I could see that in the last movie. What I am saying is, it looks even more prominent in this one. And 2, Nick sounds like Yoda from the original Star Wars trilogy. But there's no way this is possible because this film was made in 1960. Does this mean George Lucas was a fan of Neutron? Probably. Probably not. Anywho, Nick walks a few steps and says, "He's gone. Let's go." By the way, forgive me, I do not do voiceovers, so if they sound inconsistent, that is why. Anywho, I really identify with Nick. He doesn't go above or beyond his job description. We return to Televicentros. Mario is giving an angry speech about the return of Dr. Caronte, while Professor Thomas, Carlos, and Nora are at Jaime's place and look on at the TV. He tells the people, relax, as Neutron will come back to defend the city. Jaime is mad for trying to calm the city and storms off to make a phone call. Nora asks Carlos, "What do you think?" Carlos says, "I think we are just like before." Nora says, "I'm worried." But Carlos assures her, everything will be okay. She then says, "You guys are all equally important to me." And then Carlos responds with, "That is the best news I've heard in days." Which makes sense, because we have not seen much of Carlos at all. Jaime calls Mario and asks if Neutron is actually back. Mario says, yeah, he called before the broadcasting. That's suspicious. Carlos says, Mario could be Neutron. Jaime says, "What do you think, Professor?" The professor says, "I think it could be any one of you." Remember, he's British. Then he goes to bed. Nora gets picked up at the cabaret, and Carlo walks her out. In the professor's bedroom, Neutron is standing there. Thomas asks who he is and begins naming every person in the movie. And we see him leave through the window. Back at Caronte's lab, the brains have merged. Dr. Caronte then asks the brains for the formula for the neutron bomb. For some reason, the brain prints out the formula in numbers. I tried to write down the formula, but it sounded fake, so I stopped. Dr. Caronte looks over his experiment from earlier for the new automatons. He tells Nick, "I made these for a special mission." He then yells at one of the automatons to get up and go get Professor Thomas. At Jaime's place, a noise is heard. Juan, the security detail, goes upstairs, but it's a trap. He is ambushed by an automaton. The second officer goes back downstairs to look for Juan, but it's another trap. The second automaton was waiting, and the automatons go into Professor Thomas's bedroom. Luckily, Neutron is there with a flamethrower gun. He yells, "Careful, or you'll be burned by Neutron." Then, without missing a beat, he burns all 3 automatons. While the automatons burn, Neutron calls the commissioner and says, Caronte has returned. Professor Thomas goes to Jaime's bedroom and knocks, but there's no answer. Meanwhile, Neutron looks on suspiciously. Professor Thomas opens Jaime's bedroom, only to find it empty. Professor Thomas goes downstairs and accuses Neutron of being Jaime. Neutron just says, doesn't it make more sense? Jaime's with Nora? Meanwhile, at some warehouse, the automatons are moving boxes, while Nick gives orders. Back at Jaime's house, the police chief walks in. The police chief tells Professor Thomas and Neutron that the Otarki chemical warehouse was just robbed, and the employees have been sent to the Shadow Realm. Neutron deduces that Dr. Caronte must have found the formula for the neutron bomb. So he comes up with a brilliant idea. To watch all the warehouses to prevent Dr. Caronte from making the bomb. The police chief leaves 2 police to protect Professor Thomas, while him, Neutron, and Chema go check out the warehouses. At some random warehouse, Nick walks in with an army of automatons. They grab random boxes, but it's a trap from the police. The police chief and his crew look on until the chief says, "Attack!" Unfortunately, yelling "Attack!" alerts the automatons and Nick, so Nick orders the automatons to run away, while he grabs a flare gun and creates a smoke screen, allowing the monsters to get away. Neutron jumps in and tries to stop Nick, but he ends up fighting with a straggler. Luckily, the automaton is outnumbered 10-1, so they just hold him back. Neutron has a great idea: to let the beast run away so they can follow him. Then the police step 3 feet away, while the automaton is called back by Dr. Caronte through radios or something. This is never explained, by the way. They follow him to some random field, then a forest. Somehow, Dr. Caronte realizes automaton number 1 is being followed, so he orders him to destroy himself. I honestly got really excited. I thought it was going to be a big explosion, but he just takes his head off and throws it. But an explosion works way better. Our trio looks on as the body disintegrates, leaving only clothes behind. Back at Club La Roca, Mario and Jaime go to see Nora sing. Again, I couldn't find the name of this song, but if you know it, leave it in the comments below. Mario and Jaime talk about Carlos and how Nora should choose who she likes. Then, Carlos walks in. After the show, Nora talks about how she likes seeing the guys be friends, and instead of saying good job, all 3 of the guys bother Nora and tell her she needs to choose by deciding who will take her home tonight. Nora says, "Look, a distraction." And we get our musical act number 2, a trio. To be fair, I don't consider Nora or any of her performances as musical acts, since she doesn't actually sing the full song. The other acts actually play full songs, a good 3 or 2 minutes, as was the style at the time. Unfortunately, the songs have nothing to do with the movies, and more often than not, they are love songs or dance songs. Nothing to move or advance the plot at all. Anywho, Mario says, "Forget this. We can't wait on your indecisiveness. It's tearing us apart." They force her to answer, and she says, "I don't know. Let me think about it while I change." While they wait, a new musical act arrives, Los Tres Haces. At the table, the boys begin making jokes about who she will pick, until a waiter comes up and says, "Nora left." At Dr. Caronte's lab, the automatons are organizing the new material. Nick tells Dr. Caronte, "We have all the material." But Dr. Caronte says, "You forget, Thomas. Without him, nothing will work." Nick says he will go tonight, but Dr. Caronte says, "No, you will go in the day." Nick pleads with him by saying it will be more difficult. However, Dr. Caronte is evil and tells Nick, "I don't care." Nick drives a cab and takes 3 automatons with him. At some warehouse, Thomas is speaking with some warehouse foremen and wants a list of everything that was stolen. Since he is alone, the automatons attack. Thankfully, Neutron is there and rescue Professor Thomas. They run on some roof, then some stairs, then in an alley. Neutron tells Thomas there's a car, and to hide for safety. At Jaime's place, his butler is startled that Jaime is sleeping on the couch, which at first I thought was weird, but it makes sense since he has been at Nora's shows the last few nights. Jaime asks his butler, "Where's Thomas?" And the butler says he has not arrived. Jaime springs into action, and the butler says Police Chief Lozano has been asking for him. Jaime says, "It's 9. He should be here by now. I need to step out." Jaime gets dressed and leaves the house. Just then, Professor Thomas arrives. Professor Thomas tells Jaime that they attacked him, but if it weren't for Neutron, they would have taken him. Jaime tells him to be careful, then leaves. So Thomas calls Police Chief Lozano and asks for more men. Neutron appears and tells him they need to leave. He's in danger. Thomas is confused, and rightfully so, because Neutron sucker punches him. One of the automatons is dressed like Neutron. Meanwhile, outside of the house, Police Chief Lozano and his men arrive. They go to the professor's lab, but it's empty. Then they go to his bedroom, but it's also empty. Police Chief Lozano gets a phone call, and they tell him Professor Thomas has been kidnapped. At the police chief's office, he talks to his men, and he is confused. Then, Neutron appears. And for some reason, the police arrest Neutron, since Neutron was the last person to see Professor Thomas alive. Neutron says, "It must have been someone pretending to be me," but the police chief doesn't believe him. He orders Neutron to be unmasked. Neutron says no, and beats up the 4 police while being handcuffed. The police chase after him, but he escapes. One of the men says, "He must be at Nora's cabaret." Pause. I have 3 questions. Have Neutron and Nora interacted? 2. Is the cabaret Nora's? I thought she just sang there. And 3, probably the most important question, has Neutron ever been at the cabaret? Back at the cabaret, Police Chief Lozano and 4 men go backstage to Nora's dressing room. The police chief is speaking with Nora, and he tells her Thomas has been kidnapped by Neutron, but she promises she will tell the police chief any news. The police chief asks if she has seen the boys, to which Nora says no, or no in English. After the police chief leaves, Nora lets Neutron out of the closet. Pause. This is not a joke. He was legitimately hiding in a closet. This police force is not the best. Nora lied to the law? Good for her. She asks Neutron if he took Professor Thomas, and he says of course not. Wait, isn't that what a kidnapper would say? Neutron leaves through the back door. At Televicentro Studio, Nora's singing again, and the boys look on. After, the boys try to talk to Nora, but the police chief arrives and has questions. He thinks one of them is the masked man known as Neutron. Nora enters her TV studio dressing room. She sees Neutron, then realizes he is a fake. But she is too late, and the automaton attacks her. In the hallway, a random man is knocked out on the floor. When he wakes up, he tells our heroes, Neutron took Nora. The police chief and Chema rush to save Nora, and leave the man on the floor. At Dr. Caronte's lair, the automatons arrive with Nora. He orders the professor to compile the notes and create a new neutron bomb. He also introduces both of them to his new brain. When Thomas says no to Dr. Caronte, Dr. Caronte uses positive reinforcement by threatening to throw Nora in the automaton's hole. Pause. This is a hole in the ground filled with automatons. After being motivated by Dr. Caronte, Thomas says, "Cheerio, chip chip." Professor Thomas says there's a metallic alloy missing, and tells Nick to retrieve it. Later that night, Nick and more automatons steal an alloy. Dr. Caronte is happy the neutron bomb is finally complete. Dr. Caronte tells Professor Thomas, "Your services are no longer required." Caronte tells Nick to keep an eye on his guest, then leaves. Nora comes out of nowhere and says, "Thank you for saving me. Now the world is doomed." Then Neutron appears, and he yells, "Quickly, come with me." But Thomas unalives the living brain. That's kinda mean. I guess they were technically an abomination and used for evil, but still. Before they leave, Neutron says, "Wait, we will go to destroy something." He runs over to the automaton's hole, but they are missing. Professor Thomas says to ignore them, because Dr. Caronte is headed to the airport, and if the authorities do not heed his commands, he will explode the neutron bomb at 10 p.m. At the airport, a bag is placed on the floor. An unknowing couple picks up the bag and leaves. The police chief and 3 men arrive at the airport, but they do not see a bag. They go get a list from the airport and take a list of passengers to see who has the bag. The first passenger's bags are too big. At Dr. Caronte's lair, Nick calls Dr. Caronte and says Neutron was here. Funny, Nick saw Neutron and decided not to engage. Smart man. Back with the police, he sits in his car and he orders his men to look for a bag with a bomb. Meanwhile, Nick is searching random people's house. How did Nick know where to go? Did he also get a list of passengers? It's 9:20 p.m. and the police chief gets a call that a house was attacked. Meanwhile, at the original couple's apartment, Neutron finds the bomb. When suddenly, the couple walks in. And for some reason, the man has a gun, which is illegal in Mexico, by the way. The guy shouts at his missus and tells her to call the cops. But Neutron says, it's a bomb. It needs to be disarmed, or it will destroy the world. Gerardo, the husband, says, I believe you, and lets Neutron go. Neutron orders the girl to call the cops and tells Police Chief Lozano that Neutron will go to Professor Thomas to disarm the bomb. Then Neutron leaves. Gerardo yells at his wife, hurry up! At Jaime's place, Neutron arrives with the bomb, but it's another trap. Dr. Caronte was hiding in the shadow with a gun, and they have 3 minutes until the bomb explodes. He tells Neutron to drop the bomb, and the two begin fighting. It is actually kind of fun. Kind of odd that the hero is in black and the villain is white. Neutron yells at Professor Thomas to disarm the bomb. Neutron punches Dr. Caronte so hard, he short-circuits Professor Thomas's computer. Then, Dr. Caronte runs away. Neutron chases after Dr. Caronte, but he's able to get in his car, and he drives off. Neutron jumps in the car and chases after him. For some reason, despite being at night, the chase scene is in the day. Neutron chases him through the city and the desert. Dr. Caronte arrives at his evil lair, like in the beginning of the movie. They fight some more inside, the building catches on fire. Nick looks on, and he pulls a lever. And Dr. Caronte's lab is destroyed. Back at Jaime's place, Professor Thomas is glad this is over, and no one has to worry about the bomb again. Police Chief says, this is sad. I misjudged Neutron. And he asks the boys, what would Neutron say about all this? Finn. So, does the sequel always suck? That is for the fan to decide. So leave a comment and let me know what you think. Next month, we will review the last installment of the Neutron Trilogy and review Neutron versus Dr. Caronte. But fear not, as we have 2 other films in the series, and possibly a bonus episode. So stick around, because there are a lot more luchas de tres caídas coming your way. Why did Dr. Caronte give up the bomb? He had it. Why not just use it? Was Nick getting drunk in Dr. Caronte's lair? How did Caronte survive? How did Dr. Caronte know Neutron would go back to Jaime's place? Who is the real Neutron?